All right, ladies and gentlemen, class is in session. My name is Rob. I organize Idea to IPO. We've been doing events in Silicon Valley for many, many years. We hold events multiple times a week from San Jose to San Francisco. We always have a busy, busy calendar of events. I'd like to highlight some events that are coming up. This Thursday, Top 10 Leadership Skills for Entrepreneurs. That's in Sunnyvale. Next Tuesday, July 30th, another venture capital panel. Hottest Silicon Valley investment trends. Check out the details for those events and all of our events on our website, ideatoipo.com. We launched officially on February 1st, 2010. At that time, we had no members and no events on our calendar. At this stage, we have over 60,000 members among all our meetup groups in the Bay Area. We've completed over 2,100 events. By any standard, by any measure, we're the most active, most prolific startup event organization in Silicon Valley, bar none. Is that it? Yeah. All right, well, let me expand on that. So we're the most active, most prolific startup event organization in Silicon Valley, and Silicon Valley is the global center of entrepreneurship and innovation. That would make us the most active, most prolific startup event organization in the entire world. All right, I'll take it, I'll take that. Thank you very much. Our mission is to promote entrepreneurship, support entrepreneurs, build community, and provide value in the Silicon Valley startup ecosystem. To that end, we provide content that is practical, actionable, and relevant, stuff that you can actually use to succeed as entrepreneurs. And we believe in building community. Silicon Valley is an aspirational ecosystem. It attracts people from all over the world who come here to do great things. I'd like to know who here is not originally from Silicon Valley or the Bay Area. Who here was born and raised in Silicon Valley or the Bay Area? Wow, big crowd today, all 5 of you. Well, welcome. Whether you were born and raised in Silicon Valley or just arrived last night, it is important for us to provide multiple channels for you to meet people, build relationships, and grow your network. In addition to our content-oriented events throughout the week, we also have some fun events, and our next fun event is on Friday, August 16th, a TGIF mixer, thank God it's Friday, at the Hyatt Regency Santa Clara. So check that out, you're all invited. With regard to value, it is important that we provide value at each and every one of our events. So we make sure our cover charge is affordable, because we know many entrepreneurs are struggling financially. And if you cannot afford the cover charge for whatever reason, come talk to me and we can work something out. And at each and every one of our events, we make sure that we provide a delicious buffet meal. Is that a delicious buffet meal? All right, I think 3 people think it's a delicious buffet meal. That's cool. I would like to acknowledge the sponsor of that delicious buffet meal, the Royce Law Firm. So let's hear it for Royce Law Firm. More importantly, though, at each and every one of our events, we want to make sure that we provide value for your time, which is your most valuable resource. I have to ask, is anyone here getting any younger besides our moderator? I didn't think so. So when you invest your valuable time to come to our events, we want to make sure that you maximize your ROI. And we have many, many partners that help us do what we do. Law firms, venture capital firms, angel investor groups, incubators, accelerators, colleges, universities. Lots of players in the Silicon Valley startup ecosystem. Tonight, we're grateful to the College of San Mateo and the Small Business Development Center for hosting us at this beautiful venue. Is this a beautiful venue? Yeah, it's a beautiful venue. We've held many, many events here in the past, and we look forward to many, many more. They're a great partner, and we're honored and privileged to be collaborating with them. So let's hear it for Small Business Development Center and College of San Mateo. Let's hear it for Heidi Diamond. Heidi would like to tell us a few things about what's going on here at the College of San Mateo. So once again, let's hear it for Heidi.
Thank you so much. Welcome. Thank you so much for being here tonight. It's a pleasure to see you and to have you here in this beautiful venue. My name is Heidi Diamond, and I'm the Dean for Business and Technology here at the College of San Mateo. And just to share with you, I'm very passionate about entrepreneurship. I am a former small business owner, and I come from a family of small business owners. And I also was a professor for entrepreneurship at West Valley College. So I feel the same passion that all of you do. College of San Mateo and the Small Business Development Center are delighted to partner with Rob Lau and the Idea to IPO event that we're here for tonight. We're really looking forward to hearing from this exciting panel who will talk about venture capital investments and the latest innovations in artificial intelligence. Since College of San Mateo also hosts the Small Business Development Center for San Mateo County, I would like to share more details about the great work that we do. I'd also like to give a shout out to Samantha Vargas. Samantha is our Program Services Coordinator for the Small Business Development Center. And if you choose to look up our services, you would probably speak with Samantha. So who knows what the Small Business Development Center has to offer? Any of you familiar? Anyone know what we do? Yes.
Guidance to small businesses and guidance to loans and all those things.
Excellent. Anybody else?
Help them grow and scale.
Very good, thank you. So we offer an array of services. They are free of charge to the public. Basically, you would call us or fill out an online form, come in and meet with one of our many counselors. But basically, we offer services in the areas of business planning, marketing and sales, funding and loans, operation and distribution, QuickBooks, financial statements, and much more. We also are proud to sponsor an event such as this one. Just to share a few statistics about our track record, in 2018, the SBDC centers throughout California boasted the following amazing results. We started 1,470 new businesses. We created 9,962 new jobs, and we helped infuse $776 million in debt and equity capital in small businesses. We also, as an organization statewide, have logged in over 100,000 advising hours, and we have served 55,000 new businesses. And we have more than 400 advisors and more than 130 locations. In addition, College of San Mateo has a certificate in small business startup. We also offer classes in computer science and marketing. So please feel free to visit our table, pick up one of our cards, and we're happy to talk to you about either the SBDC side of the house or also the instructional side of the house. So thank you for being here. Have a great night. Nice to meet you.
A few of our other partners are here tonight. I would like to also have them come up and say a few words. Let's hear it for Kerfaz and No GPS. Applause.
That is the booth over there. No GPS is an ecosystem. It's a new technology which will put beacons everywhere. BLE beacons, which will give you location information. And it takes only microamperes of current to get location from a BLE beacon. In comparison, at the GPS satellite, you get 100 milliamperes of current at least, and you have to have 4 or more satellite in line of sight, and it takes over a minute. So with this technology, the savings is 10,000 times at least in the battery life. Batteries will increase in their life maybe 100 times because it's wasting. Right now, we are all wasting energy trying to locate GPS satellites 12,000 miles in the sky. Please come and talk to me. It is a disruptive technology. Thank you very much.
All right. All right, next up, we have Bridget Fahey from S5 Advisory. So applause for Bridget.
Hi, I'm Bridget. I'm with S5 Advisory. We're a commercial brokerage firm based here in the Valley, and we specialize in tenant representation. So I advise companies on their space needs, whether you need to lease a new space, sublease your space, or renegotiate an existing lease. So if you need any help, come talk to me. Thanks.
So though our local mission is to support entrepreneurs here in Silicon Valley, our global mission is to democratize entrepreneurship and innovation all around the world. To that end, we maintain a robust YouTube channel, youtube.com/idea to IPO. Go check it out. We have tons of videos there. We've documented and archived many of our events, and this rich, valuable content is available on demand, anytime, anywhere, totally free of charge, whether you're in San Mateo, Palo Alto, San Francisco, New York, LA, Maui, Moscow, or Timbuktu. And our partner in this endeavor is Tim Jeggers of Jeggers Films, one of the top professional videographers in Silicon Valley. Let's hear it for Tim. Applause.
Thank you, Rob. Thank you, everybody. So I'm Tim. I've been doing digital multimedia for over the last decade. I've been working with Rob for a good chunk of that time. I also do photography. I do work with real estate, promotional content, and like I said, almost anything digital media has somehow fallen into the line of what I've done the last decade. So if you have questions about any of that or where to find the content that we're actually making right now, feel free to talk to me. I'll be here all night, and I'll be looking forward to talking with you. Thank you very much.
All right, well, ladies and gentlemen, here's the schedule for the rest of the evening. We're going to have our panel go into a dynamic, insightful, spirited, entertaining, powerful discussion. And then we're going to open it up to questions at 8 p.m. to the audience. We're going to set up a mic stand here, and we'll have audience members walk up and use the mic on the mic stand. At 8:30 p.m., we are going to have a raffle. We have 3 copies of this book by Roger Royce, our moderator, called Dead on Arrival. That's a great title. How to Avoid the Legal Mistakes That Could Kill Your Startup. So we have a fishbowl that's going to be going around. Drop in your business card. We have 3 copies, and your chances are pretty good. So at this point, I'm going to pass it on to our distinguished moderator. He is one of the top corporate and startup attorneys in Silicon Valley. He's the founder of Royce Law Firm. Actually, he's an iconic figure. He is everywhere in Silicon Valley. He's at meetups, conferences, social events, the Rosewood Hotel. He's everywhere. So let's give it up for Roger Royce.
Thanks, Rob. So in the late 80s, I remember I met some people in a bar in New York City that worked for Bell Labs. I got to talking with them about how cool it would be if these really smart, brainy computer people could come up with a program that could take a little bit of the load off me, do some of the legal analysis that I like to do. Maybe just do a tax form, something like that. And I said, oh, that's easy. You just draw a little flow chart, give it to us, and we'll code it. So I drew a little flow chart, and they coded it, and it didn't quite work. So I went back to the drawing board, and I tried it again, and it didn't quite come up with the right answers all the time. And we tried it again and again and again. And then finally, I talked to an expert on AI, and he said, oh, forget it. He says, the technology is just not there, and it never will be. This is just pie in the sky. Those of us who know the space know that it just can't happen. Well, now we're 30 years later, and it's like everything has changed. It's like AI has had this resurgence. It's back. It's back with new technology, new applications, new ways of doing business, and that's what we're going to talk about tonight. This is our venture capital panel, but it's on venture capital investment in AI and what the state of the market is. So have we finally arrived? Are we finally there? Is the technology something that now can replace a lot of what I did and maybe a lot of what you folks have done? So my name's Roger Royce. I'm the founder of the Royce Law Firm. We're a business, corporate, and tax firm based in Menlo Park, offices in San Francisco, LA, lawyers in New York and Beijing. We work with technology startups. We're full service. I do corporate and tax, Allison is one of our corporate tax lawyers. I thought I saw Steve Colby here somewhere. He's in the back. He's a patent lawyer, does IP. We do everything else. So that's me. Let me ask about you. How many of you in the audience are founders of startup companies? Wow. How many investors? Oh, I found her. She's right there. I know you're all looking for her. Okay. Enterprise, people in big enterprises, big companies. I know of one. Investors, I asked about that. Academics, a couple of them. Service providers like me, a couple of us, all right. People are just curious about artificial intelligence. It's probably all of us, right? So our panel tonight is, we've got two VCs and somebody who comes from enterprise and works with AI and data. So you're going to get a really good perspective as to what the market's like. The way this will work is I'm going to, first of all, ask our panelists to describe who they are, what they do, how do they come to the space, give us their thoughts just for a few minutes, and then we'll go into a discussion. Not really a list of questions. I don't want to do that. I want to do a discussion. Sometimes it gets pretty spirited, our discussions here. Maybe we'll have that tonight, maybe not. If you have any complaints, I'm your complaint department. If you don't like the panel or the moderator, send me an email. Send your picture with it, because I'm going to print it out and I'm going to post it right over there so everyone can see it the next time I come in. So make sure you send your complaints to me if you have any. And if you don't like the food, complain to Rob. Now, by the way, I do want to mention that tomorrow is congressional testimony. Robert Mueller is going to testify. I just want you to know, I've read the Mueller report. It did not find any collusion in putting together this panel, just so you know. It didn't say there was no collusion. It just did not say there was any, okay, just so you know. All right, with that, we're going to start with you, George. Can you maybe tell us a little bit about who you are and how you come to the AI space?
Thanks, Roger. I appreciate it. So let me give you some context about my perspective. My background is joining founders and bringing what I would say is the buzzword today, disruptive technology to the market. And I was fortunate to be part of the waves of technology that transformed the market through the 90s and early 2000s, basically laying the foundation from Wi-Fi to Web 1.0 and Web 1.2. Typically, the founders had that vision and it put a team around them to execute. In my case, I executed domestically and set up the globe twice in Asia and twice in Europe. And we scaled and we went through the near-death experiences when you are scaling across the globe, or whether that's domestic or international, but we made it out whether it was an acquisition or an IPO. So that was the foundation that I basically established early in my career through the mid-career, and then did wear the investor hat as an early stage investor with a fund that invested into entrepreneurs at that initial stage, and currently went full circle. So I'm with a global firm that brings AI, ML, analytics, and a very deep understanding of data to provide value to enterprise customers, typically Fortune 500. So we're bringing in AI technology, but with a value proposition that combines that automation layer with analytics and a very deep understanding of data, how to provide growth and possibilities for corporations that weren't possible before without AI. We'll talk a little bit more about that, but that's my background. And again, I also wore the investor hat and wear it with a fund that does very early stage investing. So that brings you some context on my background. How did I do? Did I meet the timeline? Huh?
Awesome.
All right.
Awesome. You're up, Homan.
Hi, I'm Homan Yuen. I'm a partner at Fusion Fund, an early stage firm in downtown Palo Alto. So I guess my background is pretty technical. So I went to Berkeley for my undergrad in physics, and then went to Stanford for my PhD in engineering. And through that whole time, as with any technical field, data is very important. It's all about analyzing the data, collecting the data. So after that, I started a company back when clean tech was hot, and so I was doing solar cells. We had the world's most highest efficiency cell for about 7 years, and ended up selling that company to the Saudi Arabian Sovereign Wealth Fund, who is now the biggest LP in the SoftBank Vision Fund. So through my whole career, understanding data on how to use it, how to analyze it, how to apply it, I mean, that's really one of the cornerstones of how you can train up your AI systems. Louder? All right. What? Okay. And so, now I'm on the investing side. And so we've definitely seen a whole variety of companies. Back when AI first kind of made its big hype move, everyone was AI. They used to be a big data company, and then now they became an AI company. Now what we've seen more recently is AI is not as much of a buzz term, and people just use AI as the tool on how they build their businesses. And that's, I think, the maturity kind of life cycle curve we've been seeing with the technology. And so we can talk more about that later. But yeah, it's been interesting to see how AI gets applied in many different sectors, more recently, particularly in healthcare, and seeing how AI can really change the healthcare field. So yeah, that's what we've seen in AI.
I'm Nuno, and I have to confess that I'm a masochist, because not only I'm an entrepreneur, but I'm an entrepreneur in venture capital, which is the stupidest type of entrepreneur you can be. If you think it's difficult to raise money as a startup, whatever, just try to be a venture capitalist and try to raise a fund where people tell you, come back next year, or maybe on our next cycle, maybe in 3 years. So it's been a lot of fun to be an entrepreneur in this space. More seriously, I'm the founder and managing partner of Strive Capital. We're actually the first quant VC fund in the Bay Area as of 2010 when we started. Our first fund actually had an analytics engine that helped us identify deal flow and helped us do due diligence on companies that use machine learning. I actually product managed and engineering managed that. As I said, I am a masochist. And on top of that, I'm actually a venture partner also on a Sand Hill Road fund called Grishin Robotics, which focuses more on the hard tech side around Series A and B investments. In terms of the artificial intelligence field, as I just mentioned, actually I've used it in VC, which is a little bit strange and uncommon. If you guys wanted to guess how many VC firms in the Bay Area spend more than $250K a year on their technology stack, would anyone guess what percentage is that? 250K is like one person, like literally. But this is like your Google apps, your email account, anything that you spend on your IT. Would you guys care to guess what that percentage is? How many firms in Silicon Valley spend more than 250K a year? 10%, that's a very good guess actually. No, it's less than that, it's actually 5%. So basically no money is spent on tech. Actually VC is one of the least disrupted fields probably in the investment space of all time, because it's really, really difficult, particularly if you're an early stage investor, to use data to help you figure out stuff, because data is very noisy, data is not very complete, there is very little data because companies are just starting. So that's one thing that I do. I'm also a guest lecturer at Stanford and Berkeley on topics relating to product management and growth hacking. I don't stop my masochism there. I'm also on a board of a couple of nonprofits. One in particular that I'm very passionate about is Partnership for Children and Youth, focused on the after school and out of school space here in California, which has taken quite a bit of a beating over the last decade or so. And my other experience with artificial intelligence, I've been in tech for 22 years, actually 23, I counted today, I just turned 23, is that I actually in college, I did develop a game called Connections. Has everyone played Connections at all? Which is this game where you're trying to connect one side to the other and the other player's trying to stop you from connecting. Nobody's ever played it? Well, I did develop it, and it was beating me, which I don't know if it's a great achievement or not, but I was very happy that the machine was beating me. So that was my first big experience at AI, and it was fun. And I'm here today, maybe one of the more optimistic people on the panel on what AI can actually do and what it's actually already doing. It's beyond the buzzword. But I'm also one of the people that is probably a bit bearish around what AI can do to all of us. And I do think there are some doomsday scenarios ahead of us in the next decade or so.
Okay, thanks very much. So, Nuno, as a lecturer, you're probably very familiar with these terms, foundational and disruptive technologies. And the promise of AI, what we heard for so long, is that it was going to be completely disruptive. It was going to replace whole industries, mine included. You go talk to a computer if you want a legal answer. I think that a lot of times when that happens with technology, the reality is that it becomes something that companies, enterprise in particular, just uses to make themselves better, and they may use it as a tool, as Homan said. Just uses it to make them better and more productive. What is, to put it in your terms, what's the difference between the myth and the reality of AI? What is it actually being used for right now? I heard a lot of you talk about data. I've heard some of you talk about some other applications. But what's the reality? Where is it now?
AI is everywhere. I mean, we look at machine learning, we look at deep learning, it's in our everyday lives. I would allege everyone talks a lot about the Facebook incidents and what happened around data privacy. The funny part is not a lot of people talk about algorithms. And actually what happened to Facebook is they had algorithms that started doing stuff, right, that they were not meant to do. And someone was gaming them. There were a bunch of really intelligent people that were gaming them, right? And so in some ways, it's all around us. It's pretty pervasive already. And what we're seeing today is sort of the manifestation of that. Now, a lot of people have this great idea of AI, which is AI is self-defining. It's machines start thinking for themselves. It's maybe more the definition of general knowledge and superintelligence. But that's not what AI is per se. AI starts with methodologies like machine learning, which takes a bunch of data and tries to figure out patterns, right? That's basically simplify what it's done there. We talk about deep learning. A lot of deep learning is around neural networks. A lot of it is actually around computer vision. It's around identifying, again, patterns and understanding from images and videos what is happening. All of this is around us today. It's being used today. I do think, actually, there is something happening around AI that fascinates me a little bit more, and maybe that's the myth part to your point, Roger, which is, I think what got us here is really, best analogy I have is brute force. So it's a lot of compute, it's a lot of processing capability, it's very low latency networks, and it's basically a lot of data. And if you think about it, that's brute force. It's just, you just have a lot of capability of breaking rocks, right? And then you get patterns and then you see things. I think the cool thing of what's going to happen to AI going forward, and I think in that sense we're still at mythology level right now, is the finesse piece of AI, right? What comes next? Which is with much less data, with much better algorithms, where do we get? And there's a lot of debate around whether data is really the distinctive part here and that algorithms have been commoditized. I'm a big believer that algorithms have not been commoditized and we haven't seen much of it yet. So that's at least my view on myth. I think we are in a reality of AI. I think it's actually pretty pervasive. A lot of companies already use it. So for me, the cool part is what's next and what's going to change around it.
I think I bring a little different perspective, to say the least. What I'm seeing is the following. AI is an automation layer that is able to leverage the ability to understand what data and what analytical framework will produce a result that wasn't possible before, i.e., most of what is algorithmic is producing insights. It's an automation of producing this data will produce this set of insights. What AI is able to do today, specifically in the enterprise, is that next wave, which is recommendations about what decisions to make specifically that will create unprecedented results. So I don't see it in that context. I see it at a much different level because we're actually executing it today in the enterprise. So what does that really mean? That means that before you were given a lot of algorithmic data, all right, or insights to make decisions around, it actually automates the decision process, but it doesn't run by itself. We have what we call AI coaches and very, very high-level professionals that are managing that process. But the output's much different. So for instance, on a growth metric in a corporation that's in a mature industry, you're getting 0.5% at most growth. We're able to yield between 3 and 7% growth with a series of recommendations that impact revenue or gross margin, as an example, in a commoditized business. So it's much different today when you're looking at AI in the context of what it could do when it's combined with analytics and an understanding of data. So I'm bringing a little different perspective, as the potential of AI is actually here today. It's taken the level of insights that was previous and now making
Closer to your, hold on.
recommendations on decisions.
Yeah.
And then that's self-learning. So
George,
it
hold
gets
the
more
mic.
powerful. So
Hold the mic a little closer. to
it
your
gets
mouth.
more powerful over time.
Let me challenge you guys on that just a little bit and take a big step back. I mean, I've heard you both mention machine learning and data now. So just to my non-technical mind, you said it's a pattern recognition machine, basically. So if a human, if I want to know what 3 + 3 is and I ask a bunch of people, eventually I'll decide that it's 6 because that's the pattern. But if one of them says it's 7, as a human, I'll say, well, that's a mistake. I'm going to disregard that. But I understand that computers can't do that. They just have to factor that in to their algorithm. So isn't there sort of a fundamental weakness that we just haven't overcome yet in AI?
Yeah, I mean, to what Nuno talked about earlier, you know, there has been a lot of brute force in AI. I mean, we basically were starting from algorithms, platforms, and such, which really needed to be trained up. I mean, take autonomous driving, for example. You know, Waymo is driving millions of miles, at first per year, now per month, to collect that data, and you still look at where their system and platform is, it still can't figure out how to deal with right turns or left turns in Mountain View when the pedestrian is crossing a street. And it's not that it won't get there, it just needs a lot of data to figure out how to deal with all these edge cases and situations. And so we're, to Nuno's point, we're still in a brute force kind of phase where we're having to train all these systems up. And so, to your point, you know, we have to feed enough data such that the system knows, you know, 3 + 3 is 6, not 7. And if you just give it, you know, let's say 10 data points, it won't know. But you have to give it thousands, millions of data points to know what the right, you know, answer is. And then, also to Nuno's point, then you can start doing the more advanced things. You know, okay, now the engine's trained, it can start making these decisions, that decisions, where it doesn't need to compute, you know, millions of data points nonstop.
Okay. I'm going to shift gears here a little bit. Well, I'm going to ask you, is China eating our lunch in AI? Because I've been hearing that a lot lately, that the United States is way behind and is never going to catch up with what's going on in China.
I think it is. But it is for reasons that I'm not sure are solvable. And just to be clear, I lived in China for 6 years, so I'm not talking about China from the perspective of someone who lives in the US. I've lived there for 6 years and saw what was happening. I think the reality is, from a regulatory standpoint, from the perspective of the government and the use of data, there's actually a lot more openness to the use of data for all sorts of things. So that provides a tremendous advantage to any company that wants to extract value out of that data. Secondly, there's immense capital in the market. I mean, everyone talks about Silicon Valley. I mean, the Silicon Valley is already sort of passé versus Beijing from just a venture capital community and ecosystem perspective. That's the new center of VC. Now, it's a very Chinese center of VC, so from the outside, it looks like it's very insular, but the capital that goes into these markets is incredible. And that third thing is allowed to create companies that are just mind-boggling, the growth that they've had. I mean, we look at ByteDance with TikTok. I mean, TikTok is the thing. They're the biggest advertiser on Facebook. They're the biggest advertiser on Google, right? They've had over 1 billion downloads. So if you haven't paid attention to that, those guys are just basically totally conquering the consumer market, right? Everyone's talking about the new Snapchat. This is the new Snapchat. It's already there, right? It's videos, it's short-term videos, short-form videos. Everyone's using it, right, in the US. It's a big deal. Now, what are the implications of that? What's the implications of the use of data by Chinese companies? We shall see. Right now, I think that's one of the interesting pieces of what's going on. To be very honest, I'm not saying this is like the bad guys in China versus the good guys in the US, because we've seen that in the US there are some practices that have happened at the intelligence level that are also not the good guys. So in some ways, I think we're just sort of in the geopolitics of using information and using it for all sorts of things. So I think it is actually, I think we have incredible quality in the companies here. We look around us with Google, Facebook, the level and the quality of PhDs and engineers and scientists that we have here is incredible. So I'm hopeful that we have a chance. But just the nature of regulation, the nature of the use of data in China gives China a huge advantage that I think will be very, very difficult to sort of recover from in the next few years. So I'm a little bit more pessimistic on that.
I'll just add to that. I think the perspective that I've gained is, in fact, in working directly with the three, if you will, Facebook, Amazon, and Google. It's what we call AI native companies. Everything that they will do is based on an automation of a physical or manual task. And I could tell you from working with them, when we do a project up in Seattle, it's automated immediately. So what I'm really alluding to is the power for a company that actually embeds AI and machine learning into the core essence of the company creates an unfair advantage, as we've seen with that. Now, how is that going to work as more and more companies are becoming aware of that? What I'm seeing from the enterprise level, and it impacts people, is that the ability to build huge data lakes now, the analytics team is becoming less and less of a requirement because of AI and ML.
Closer.
Because of AI and ML. It's able to, if you will, you don't need the huge workforce that you once did. So what is that implication over time? The roles of both analytic folks, data folks are changing. And that is really a key top of mind in companies, both small, mid, and large, of the impact of what AI and ML is doing in creating efficiencies, but also the redeployment of that same talent team in other areas. So I'm seeing that transition happen within the companies that I'm working with.
Are you seeing a transition? I've heard about disruption and people losing their jobs and being replaced by computers. Are they actually being deployed someplace else, or is this a social problem?
No, it's a great point. I'm finding that the hiring level has flattened, so they're not being replaced or let go. But the ability now, for instance, to take a data set that doesn't require the type of discipline that might have done to build a big data lake to get a, if you will, result is much less. So the replacement of is not occurring yet. It's just flattened out. That's what I'm seeing.
I see.
Yeah, I was gonna say, in talking to different industries, I don't really see this, the job loss that people are kind of saying that AI will bring. If anything, as what you just mentioned, there are new AI tools which are useful tools for people who may not know how to do data analytics, and now they can use it themselves and provide insights and, obviously enhance their workflow and workload. Even just thinking about something that was big 2 or 3 years ago, how self-driving trucks, using AI stack was going to displace a whole generation of truck drivers. It turns out there's actually a huge shortage of truck drivers now. There are not enough truck drivers. Walmart is willing to pay $90,000 a year for a truck driver to drive for them because there's not enough truck drivers. So now actually trucking fleets, trucking OEMs, Walmart, Target, they're actually all looking for autonomous vehicle startups doing trucking to help with the trucker shortage problem. So I think what we've seen is that the AI technologies and companies will actually end up helping a lot of the workforce do the things that they want to do and not have to worry about having worker turnover because they don't want to walk the Amazon warehouse nonstop. They'd rather have a robot who knows how to navigate the warehouse, bring the objects to them, and then they can pack and ship the materials.
Okay. All right, thanks. Well, let me ask the question everybody's thinking here. It's the one we always get no matter what the panel, what the topic. What are you guys investing in? What's fundable? What kind of AI startup? What would be a good bet? Somebody came to you and they're an artificial intelligence company.
We focus on really 3 types of companies that I would call AI companies, so to speak. One is what I would call app layer companies, so companies that are basically developing algorithms on top of existing platforms, be it TensorFlow, Watson, etc. So they're not developing the platform itself. They're just doing verticalization, productization on top of it. And we quite like that. We think it's sort of an analogous to the app economy, which is where Strive first invested in its first fund. So it's sort of on top of a platform that's growing relatively rapidly in its scale. So we quite like that. For example, we invest in a company that's doing something around recruiting, tipping recruiting on its head and trying to figure out who the best engineers are out there, then try to figure out what would make them leave the companies they're in, and then finally linking it back to potential employers that would match that criteria. And literally, they're riding on top of TensorFlow and other platforms. So they're not really developing their own stack fully, but they are an AI company because they are developing algorithms on top of it. They are collecting a lot of data around it, et cetera. The second type of companies are sort of companies that use AI by the way, which is as part of their proposition in their core development. They have machine learning, or they're using neural networks to do things that they need to do to actually deploy effectively to the market. So for example, we invested in a company that is in the indoor farming space, and they're using aeroponics as a methodology to do that. They use computer vision, they have robotics, so it's a by the way they need to use it, and they are developing things around computer vision that are very particular to them. They will have data sets that are very particular to them, but it's part of a fuller stack of what they're actually trying to do in the market. And then the third thing that we're really excited about is what I would call the finesse guys. Remember earlier I was talking about the guys who are trying to really innovate around algorithms, and there we're looking at people that are a little bit fuller stack in terms of their software development, so they're doing apps that fit to platforms that they're creating. And we're looking in particular at reinforcement learning, evolutionary computation, a few other fields around AI where we think there's still a couple of breakthroughs that we're missing. Evolutionary computation obviously has been around for a very long time, and there's companies that have raised a lot of money doing it, but we think it's sort of probably ready for the pickings, and there will be some really core innovations in the next 2 or 3 years. So those are really the 3 areas that we look around AI.
Yeah, for us, we're, as a firm, more focused on looking at overall technologies which can integrate, automate, facilitate existing industries. You know, I know a lot of people talk about disruptive, you know, changing how things work. I think that works for certain industries, but when you're talking about, you know, starting a company, let's say in healthcare, or, you know, warehouse logistics, or let's say automotive, you're not going to come in and completely change the industry. It's going to be, one, very difficult, and two, you might get regulated out of it. So we're looking at people and companies who can build something which can then integrate in. For example, with, if it's warehouse automation, you know, find a robotics technology which can then integrate with existing warehouses. If it's healthcare and AI, for example, well, how can you take this large amount of data that exists in healthcare and develop insights out of it? For example, we have a company called Sutter Medical where they're trying to take gobs of MRI, CT scan data and ingest it, learn from it, and figure out, okay, if we take a shorter, let's say CT MRI scan so that the hospital can now do, let's say, 4 scans an hour instead of 1 scan an hour, what do those scans look like? And so then the hospitals can then use that technology just to get more patients through the existing capital that they have. So we're looking at companies on how you can use AI and other technologies on integrating your stack, and also how to build with the businesses. Another case, like, for example, is there's a lot of insurance tech companies who are trying to disrupt the insurance industry. I don't think you're going to take a Swiss Re or Munich Re or State Farm out of business. What you can do is build businesses that will then work with them either on like lead generation, revenue increase, you know, cost reduction, and they could buy you for a lot of dollars. So that's kind of how we view investing with technology and AI.
Are companies doing that? How far along are they?
I would say there are quite a few.
Yeah.
I mean, like, again, take the insurance space, for example. There are a lot of people who are trying to develop technologies where you can automate claim processes, you know, whether that's using computer vision to identify damage, you know, using AI to figure out, you know, quotes on new policies. You know, just trying to figure out how can the insurance company make it a lot easier for a customer to get onto their platform, so to speak.
You know, I've been hearing about that, in fact, that exact example for a long time. I guess my question is that the reality now? That is a technology that is actually at play in the space, I think is what I'm hearing.
It's a good question, yeah. So the American Family is using it. I would say State Farm is a little behind, and from what I can see. But other firms like Munich Re are definitely implementing a lot of these different types of technologies in their customer processes now. So, I mean, they know that, I mean, without stereotyping too much, the millennial is going to want to, let's say they get in a car accident or they have a flooding at home. They're just going to take a picture on their app, upload it, and then get a check in the mail essentially the next day. I mean, that's what they want, and that's what the insurance companies know they have to do.
Yeah. So George, in your experience, is enterprise pretty receptive to these sorts of tools? Are they buying it? Are they all in? Or is it still kind of a sales job to get people to look at this?
That's a great question. I think the way I'm seeing it, both from some of my peers, if you will, in the venture side, as well as my own experience in the enterprise, there's two buckets for AI. One is an automation layer, which is much more of a point, what we call low AI. And then the other one that I think both the venture community and enterprises are resonating with, which is what I call high impact AI, or machine learning when it's combined. And in that has the ability to change the trajectory of a company or a market, and that's possible. And I think when you look at the way that AI, I mean, literally is being sold in today to the enterprise, you're finding the C-suite and EVP and VP suite of major companies now open because they can't get that type of insights or technology internally. So they are going to open themselves up to entrepreneurs, to companies that bring a set of insights that their own team and their own ecosystem won't yield. So I'm finding it much more successful to come in with what I call high value or high AI around and talk in terms of business, not obviously the technology, but talk in terms of the impact of what it can do. And they're very open to it. We're finding quite a surprising receptiveness.
So what's a good opportunity that's still left in this space for our startup entrepreneurs in the audience? What are good businesses that, that are not too crowded, but that there's an opportunity for AI to maybe add some value?
I think there's tons. I mean, to your point earlier, there's a lot of problems that have not been solved. And also to your point, there's a lot of issues with automation that have not been solved. So I'm a product guy by background, so I always think from the user flow and the use case. If you guys look at the world that we're in from a consumer standpoint, from an enterprise standpoint, there's so many things that actually haven't been solved, right? There's such a lack of optimization. I mean, if we talked about healthcare, and I'm not an expert at all in healthcare, but if we talked about healthcare by itself in the US, just there, you could see like there's all these areas that are not working today. Now, that doesn't mean that all these areas are worthwhile exploring, right? Because there's regulatory issues, there's issues in the value chain. We have to take into account that our players, as you were talking about, the reinsurers and the insurance companies, that have a lot of power in the value chain, right? One of the issues, for example, we forget in the whole self-driving car discussion is the automotive OEM side of the fence has highly integrated with the supplier side of the fence, right? We have the so-called tier one suppliers in that market who have immense power, and if you wonder why, these things sometimes never scale, right? So there are suppliers in the market and very few of them actually command huge exits. I mean, Mobileye is the one that comes to mind, right? Magically. And everyone hates Mobileye, by the way. I hope there's no one from Mobileye here today. Everyone in the OEM industry hates Mobileye because they've been the supplier who've broken the ranks of the tier one suppliers, et cetera, right? But just try and do what we call customer feedback interview in venture capital. So when we're doing due diligence on a company, one of the things that we'll often do is we will call customers or people that have bought products from you or are doing a trial or a POC or whatever. And the most fascinating thing to me is the only industry where I have calls where systematically the players that I'm talking to are throwing their startups under the bus, quite literally, right? Where they're saying, you know what, we're probably not going to renew the trial, we're probably not going to buy from them in the future, is the automotive industry. And that's fascinating to me. So again, just to go back to the point I was trying to make, I think there's a lot of problems still to be solved where machine learning, because of its capabilities to identify patterns that we humans cannot see, of creating optimization, of creating insights, of creating predictability, is very, very powerful. But always try and figure out, are there forces in that value chain, are there forces in that market that just will make you fail because you won't have a chance in succeeding with that type of value chain. So that would be my advice to the entrepreneurs here tonight.
Yeah, I think I was mentioning to someone tonight that I don't really see companies coming in anymore pitching themselves as an AI or ML company. I think that hype cycle is gone, and they just now implement that. That's just part of their business model. It's part of the tool they're using, and now they're just taking the data that they can get access to and building a business around it. And I think there are many industries where there's just a lot of data where it has not really been tapped yet, and to provide the insights, to analyze and to monetize. And I think even going forward, there's just going to be even more data. There's, whether it's IoT or healthcare or anything, where you're just starting to generate lots and lots of data. That data has to be analyzed at some point, and there has to be insights, and there has to be decisions made from that. So I think there's tons of opportunities that are coming forward in the future. Even I met a company today that was basically they're using AI ML to gather, I would say, public data sources on someone. Let's say you're meeting with someone and you're trying to find a way on how to connect with them. So they look up, what this person likes. So you're trying to find, okay, what does this person say? What do they really like? What do they believe? And trying to get that insight. So when you talk to them on almost like a sales or conversational process, you can connect with them on a personal level. I mean, that's another level of, providing insights to a user to how to get insights on how to provide the connection. And so that's something that hasn't really been done yet, for example, and that's just a lot of technology that has to be built up around that. But now that we're getting the data, we're getting the algorithms, I think these are the type of applications we're going to see.
Yeah, I would just compliment what's being said. I think the real future is the asset that's the most leverageable with AI and ML is data. And we now have massive amounts of data, both unstructured and structured data, that is the, if you will, the core essence of what's possible now with AI and ML. So I think the future is very bright. And I think from an entrepreneur and both perspective, as well as from the ability to move it into the market, is just beginning. Even though it's been around for a long time, the infrastructure and the data sets haven't. So that's another view.
Let's talk more about that. What's the future look like for AI? Next year when we do this panel, what will we be talking about? Will there be big advances? Do you think it's going to move? Are we going to be where China is? Is all of healthcare going to be automated? What do you think that the future for 2019 and 2020 is?
I think something that people are actually starting to talk more about, which I think people should, is ethics in AI.
What?
Ethics.
Ethics. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I know there's a lot of talk about, as you said, machines nominally being non-biased. And I would say they probably are, but the data you feed in can be biased, right? I mean, a joke is, let's say you gather all the data of people who live in the town of Atherton, and you do some number crunching. So you think, okay, everyone in California, lives in $10 million homes and has a net worth of, $20 million. That's not right. But I mean, if that's the data you're feeding into the system, that's what it's learning. And so there's, I think, the black box nature needs to be examined. And then also, we talked a little earlier about what China's doing with their AI systems, what the US is doing. I think we need to think about where is technology being applied and how is it being used, right? I think there's a lot of discussion that can be done there, and I think a lot of the backlash that we're seeing in Silicon Valley is technology companies not actually taking responsibility of how their technology is being used. I think there's been a lot of talk about, oh, well, Silicon Valley is the underdog, we're just developing tools, we don't have to worry about it. That's total BS. Silicon Valley is developing very powerful tools which need to be thought about how to be used.
I think also the era of really, really deep personalization is going to unfold with the power of AI and ML. I mean, we're able to do things which is what we call a digital twin today. That's an automated bot, if you will, bot level algorithm that actually can follow patterns that can go all the way down to an individual and therefore personalize the customer experience or a particular solution or offering. So I think the degree of personalization is really the future.
Yeah, well, not only that, I know that law enforcement uses those sorts of tools. Isn't that how they got the Silk Road guy, something like that? But what you said just really scares me.
Can I make a prediction instead of, I'm not sure exactly everything that's going to happen, but I have two predictions of what will probably happen the next year. There are just wild guesses. I think we will have an event that will be very serious that will show us that some AI agent, be it machine learning agent or whatever, misbehaved. Someone will die or something dramatic will happen. I think we'll start having incidents like that. I hope it doesn't happen, but if I had to predict it probabilistically, I think it will happen over the next 1 or 2 years. And we'll start paying attention to exactly what you were saying, the notion of ethics, the notion of engineers are actually programming stuff that are becoming sometimes very much black boxes, that they don't fully understand what they actually develop because it's almost impossible to. The second thing that I think will happen is I think we will have a Chinese company sort of getting in there in between the Microsofts and Amazons of the world. And in some ways, I was talking about regulation and data early on China, but we have to acknowledge one thing which I think has changed dramatically over the last 5 or 6 years, which generally there is product innovation in China now, right? TikTok didn't come from an American company. I know there was a merger with Musical.ly, but it didn't come from an American company. And I think what we're seeing, for example, as investors, is in many cases we're looking, for example, at markets like China or India, or even sometimes Russia or Southeast Asia or Korea for grand innovations in terms of not only business model and operating model, which is what we've always assumed, but also product innovations. And they're happening. So for example, if I want to look at the future of retail, and if I want to look at the future of what grocery shops, et cetera, look like, I'm not going to look at Amazon Go. Amazon Go is 3 years behind what Alibaba is doing with Hema in China. If you guys haven't looked at Hema that Alibaba is doing, look at it, right? These guys are ahead of the game, right? You know, it's little robots that bring your food. It's basically distribution systems that are as capillary as grocery shops of your neighborhood. It's people going in and not having to actually going through lines, et cetera, right? So this is the future, and it's happening. And I'm not just saying it's just China, but I do think that China is sort of a little bit misrepresented in terms of product innovation, in particular in the last 6 years. One last thing, Tencent. Everyone now is talking about gaming. Gaming's the thing, right? Gaming's bigger than movies and music together and all this stuff. It's 50% bigger than music and movies as markets, right? 150 billion. That's gaming. Tencent's been doing things around gaming for 11, 12 years. They're one of the biggest gaming developer companies in the world just because they have stakes in everything that really matters. Epic Games, Fortnite, all these things, they own it, right? So while we were not paying attention, these guys figured out what the future was, what entertainment was going to look like, and they invested in it, and they are making a killing, and they will make more of a killing. That's my hypothesis.
Now you guys are starting to scare me. It's starting to sound like Elon Musk with all these predictions. And that kind of brings me to one maybe last point. I hadn't heard any of you talk too much about security. And there's really two things, how AI can be used to provide security, data security, for example. But secondly, when you start telling me about machines getting so involved in the process of food production, for example, it seems to me that if that system were hacked or something were to go wrong, well, that could be deadly. That could be disastrous. Is any comment on that? What should we be concerned about that? Are there companies that are, putting in some sort of protections? Is there a layer of protection from the machines, especially if they get hacked and go wrong?
So the disadvantage sometimes of being a great optimist and believing that we're all going to be augmented by AI and all these great technologies is that you also see the other side of the coin, and you can be very pessimist very quickly, right? I believe that it will be very difficult for us to enforce certain degrees of security in the agents that we're coding in some way, unless we start creating very aggressive boundary conditions on what I call interfaces. So what systems do these systems have access to, right? Do I give access from my system to another system that may be, for example, connected to the distribution network of a company? Do I give it access, for example, to what might be the energy distribution network of a country? I think the things that we're giving access to, the boundary conditions of these interfaces, are the point where you start from, and having very aggressive ways of basically blocking the exchanges between these systems is just a very, very basic start. Certainly as a computer engineer, that's what I would say is the beginning. And then I think there needs to be thinking around boundary conditions for agents to act upon, right? Because if the agent's only motivation, right, if the software agent only motivation is to optimize something, again, to your point, it will consume whatever it's given to it, and it will optimize for the data that's given, and will create prediction around that. And God willing, it will not do actions, right? Because if it does do actions, it can do all sorts of things, right? Because if you look at it, it's really just optimizing for very basic functions, right? So it's like my optimization thing is the level of wealth in this area, right? You know, if I go to the extreme, if I optimize for the level of wealth in this area, it's okay to get half of the people in that area killed, right? Because, I mean, I'm optimizing for the I'm exaggerating here, but the point I'm making, which I know is a very facetious point, is to say these things need to have boundary conditions. They need to have some sort of ethic engines, not just business logic engines to them, on how they decide and how they make things happen, in particular if you go beyond prediction, to your point. If we go into actions, et cetera.
I'm sorry, that's a great point. To your point, just to give a couple different perspectives. One is the rules that go inherently into the algorithm and the automation layer of AI is human-based. Those rules are human-created, and they are very specifically structured to prevent some of the mishaps that you're alluding to. The other area is the tech stack itself. Is with the addition of AI and ML, you're seeing what we call an intelligence stack that sits above the current tech stack to make sure the type of security and the type of management and oversight is built into the infrastructure, and we're seeing that as a requirement, that it's evolving in the enterprise as an example. So there's two layers to it that I'm seeing.
I would say, though, for example, I know of one case in this company, I will not name them, but they were developing a system that was basically going to go do trading in public markets, not high-frequency trading, but just normal trading, where the agents were going to trade positions. And they were using evolutionary computation, where basically the system is creating code for itself after a while. So it's no longer just a human developer. The system starts creating code, and that code evolves over time. A little bit like genetics, right? So the next agent that gets created, it's an evolution from the previous agent, and will get better. And one day they realized that one of their trading desks, so one of their systems and clusters of agents, were basically beating the rest of the market around them dramatically. I mean, they were doing really, really well. Again, this is they hadn't gone live. They were just running on data that was not live data. Okay, that was basically it. So there was nothing happening. They were not trading in the markets. They were trading in a fake market. But they were wondering what was happening. And it took 5 days to these people, very intelligent people, PhDs, you know, very, very good engineers, to figure out that this agent was effectively, had done two things. The agents in this trading desk were effectively doing inside trading. So they'd figured out access to data in the future, because the data was all there, right? And they thought they'd limited the system in terms of what data they could see in the future. So they were only seeing data that they were supposed to see in the present. And they'd created actually rules and security systems around it. So the second thing that had happened is these guys, so the code that the agents had developed themselves actually allowed them to hack into the database and figure out what was the data ahead, right? Okay, now, we all laugh at this, but this didn't happen this year. This happened 7 years ago. This incident happened 7 years ago. And it took 5 days for these guys to figure out what was going on. Thank God it was just freaking trading, and you know, it was sort of a condition that they probably didn't do all the right things that they should have done from an infrastructural perspective. Maybe that wouldn't have happened in normal markets, right? Certainly it wouldn't, because you couldn't see the future results of a company in the normal markets. But you know, I think that's where I'm trying to get to, is I think there's a lot of brute force machine learning, but there's a lot of algorithmic stuff that's happening out there that I don't understand at all, right? I have no clue, right? My connections game that beat me was using basic heuristics, which some people would even argue it's really not artificial intelligence, right? But what these guys are doing is a different ball game altogether, right? And that sort of scares me a bit, right? Hopefully not too much. Hopefully we'll still be around next year.
Okay, well, I think you get the last word on this. Ready, Rob? All right. Thanks very much, panel.
Let's hear it for the panel. All right, well, ladies and gentlemen, now it's time for audience Q&A. Who's got a question for the panel? So we're going to form a line right here, so step right up to the microphone. And go for it.
Yeah. Nowadays, AI is synonym with the GPUs and massive amount of data and big computing power. One of my engineer has developed a deep learning neural network on Arduino. And another one is working on Cortex M0 MCU, which is very low-end MCU, cost less than $2, $3. That's it, both MCUs. Because they are crunching only two numbers, geolocation, that's all, with the help of sensors. And they have achieved results. Do you see any scope for this sort of lightweight AI in future? Or do you know examples like that? Because computing power is good, but that it can go out of control, as Nuno has said. But this sort of thing, AI will have no ethical issues because we know what we are doing. Thank you very much.
Understand the question?
Do you see any example or future of this lightweight AI on lightweight, small edge, on the edge, maybe you can say, edge devices, say for example. They can make use of AI with very low power.
No, so you're talking about edge processing, so AI processing on the edge?
Yeah,
Yeah.
maybe, yeah, that's the
I mean, it's already happening, right? And there are applications where you need to do it on the edge because you just have too much latency on the network to get the response back. I was looking at something, someone showed me a demo of a mirror operating system that's running on top of Android open source. Actually, funny, I saw it at Google, but the operating system that's riding on top of the Android is not Google's. I guess Google is quite thoughtful about owning the operating system that is in your toilet, which is nice of them. But in this case, for example, they were using the TensorFlow Lite technology that they've just deployed, Google, and they were doing processing on the edge for face recognition, for basically the filtering stuff that we see today on Snapchat, where I can change my eyelids, my hair color when I'm in front of the mirror, etc. So that had to be computed on the edge. I think we will have, for sure, use cases of edge computing using AI algorithms, right, that will be run from the machine itself, not going to the cloud, for sure.
My name is Manish. I'm founder of Nether Systems. I'm just wondering, panelist opinion about the application of AI in healthcare and medical imaging.
Yeah, I mean, I think this has become a very popular topic over the last, I would say, 2 to 3 years. I think the healthcare industry is realizing that it needs to change, and it has a lot of data on, patient records, diagnostics, and there's got to be a way on how to get better insights from that and improve quality of care. I think people are demanding more of healthcare, and I think both medical providers, pharmaceuticals, as well as equipment manufacturers are trying to figure out how to take all this data and, of course, monetize it. So if you can get, better drugs, better personalized drugs, better imaging, maybe future prediction based on genomics, then I think that's what they're trying to do. Now, the biggest question, I think, is, unlike other technologies, if you make a mistake, just like in autonomous cars, it's not, some patch you can just fix, right? You've dramatically affected someone's life. So I think how regulators deal with this and how people go through the trial process is still up in the air. But I think people are definitely thinking about it.
Hi, my question is about actual driving business. What are some of the AI companies and in what industries are they in that are actually driving millions of dollars in business? Because we're talking about future opportunities and AI going and impacting insurance, healthcare. It all seems to be more like something that's not yet monetized. Maybe I'm wrong. I want to hear your thoughts on, has it actually been making money?
I'm going to give my facetious answer. Google is an AI company. They've always been an AI company. I think they make billions of dollars out of being an AI company. I think the ad tech industry was formed on a lot of things that are based on machine learning and not just statistical analysis. I mean, if you want to look at the best talent in the world around the matching, doing the really complex stuff. It's not, everyone talks about data science, etc. Data scientists do really complex stuff on data that has been treated, that actually works, that is not garbage data, right? But there's, the more complex piece of the puzzle, which is data extraction and data transformation in many cases, as you were alluding earlier, because there's a lot of unstructured data, there's more and more unstructured data and structured data at the table. So you just need to look at the ad tech companies. I mean, they've been making money out of that, right? And a lot of the great talent that exists today in that space is coming from actually ad tech. Unfortunately, a lot of ad tech companies imploded. Fortunately for us, a lot of these people are now doing other things, which is great.
I'm seeing an evolution in the functional side of businesses that are being empowered by AI. You look at something as simple as, or as functional as sales. The type of recommendations that are sitting on top of Salesforce now that are coming out of AI and the data sets that are outside of CRM are extraordinary for salespeople and what they're able to recommend and change their role from selling into advising. I'm seeing the functional role of that. I'm seeing the functional role of the CMO now being able to do things that weren't possible around personalizing what they're doing, right? So I'm seeing the function, AI making a great impact and the enabling entrepreneurs that do that in the functional areas of business. So that is going to be the most, I think, apparent, well, one of the most apparent out, if you will, signs of the impact of AI, if you will, and ML. So that's a sort of a comment generally on that.
Hope you don't take my job. I done marketing at a startup.
So I would like to make a statement first. Sorry, it just happened. Someone said the Industrial Revolution took away the muscle power from the people. So people with strong muscles were not needed anymore. And then ask about AI. AI will take away the intelligence from people. So his conclusion was the only thing humankind will be left is personality. What do you think?
That's a great comment. Actually, I think it commoditizes AI in one way. Some of the, what I would call the intelligence behind different areas, whether that's sales or customer service. So that automation layer is what actually will allow the people side of the business to become much more powerful and much more impactful. I know that sounds like a lot of theory, but I'm seeing it actually take place. So the idea that you think you could automate yourself out of the people-to-people business is a myth. Look at Sephora. Sephora has not been an early adopter of technology, but that company is growing massively in spite of the digital threats because of the customer service, because of that value add. So I think even in the sales side, you're not replacing that function, you're empowering it. I see it as, I see the ability to bring the mean of the people, whether it's customer service, marketing, or sales, up a level and bring a much higher performance because of AI, not the replacement of people.
I think the point of, AI will take away the IQ side, it will take over, so the IQ in humans, it's more of a general intelligence, super intelligence type discussion. I think we are really far from getting there, but it might happen. If I had to make a guess, it will. I don't know when, I have no clue. Maybe I won't be alive anymore, which would be good news. That would be dramatic. But I think it will be the IQ. I think the EQ piece will be very difficult, the emotional range, the dimensions of interactions, etc. The heart piece, the gut feeling, etc. will be very difficult. So for example, the way we looked at it in our own venture firm, if you guys remember, I was talking about having developed our first fund around a quant thesis and an engine that helped us make decisions, and it helped us identify companies that we should talk to and deal flow, etc. To be very honest, it's really an augmenting layer to us. This system doesn't need to predict the future. I just need it to amplify my top of funnel and help me be more productive when I do due diligence. That's literally it. If it does those two things for me, I'm better than anyone else around me because of the stat I was giving you. Very few people invest in that. And I think that's still the stage we're at in terms of development, so it's a good analogy. It's really an augmenting optimization piece, and it does provide automation. I think we're still ways to go to lose the IQ battle. We might one day, but I think we're still ways to go.
By the way, that line was so good, I just tweeted it.
As we continue to increase automation and augment human intelligence, where do you see the value for synthetic data? Or is there a value for synthetic data?
I personally think there is, right? I think there is value for synthetic data. I think there's value for anything that provides fundamental virtualization environments, in environments that allow you to go to the next level without necessarily having to demonstrate it. And I think, you know, I think sort of it's a given. I've seen a lot of companies around that space recently. So I think there's a lot of value in it.
Okay, so there was this topic about the ethics and security in relation to AI. And I know Google talks and does a lot about the ethics of their machine learning models and trying to figure out how to deal with that problem. But the question is, do you really see other companies or companies who come to you for the investments being serious about thinking how to secure their AI? And do you think that there will be such really serious approach to it? Because when you say that you're happy that AI is not doing actions, but just suggesting you, well, we all use Google Maps, and Maps it's just suggesting you to make that right turn, and you trust it, you believe it. Imagine if the Google Maps put you all on the same track, on the same path, to do the same turn on the same San Francisco quarter. There will be, or if the Uber will order like 100,000 of Uber drivers to the same address. It's just suggesting the Uber driver to go there. So sometimes we trust too much to the suggestions from the AI and follow that suggestion, and then it can create a problem. Or some bad actor can do it. And the second question, do you see AI watching the AI? Like companies who create the security AI, who detect such kind of anomalies or alert upfront that the problem can occur? Thank you.
I would say, at least at the startup level, I don't think there are many companies thinking about the security aspects of AI, right? I mean, they're just thinking about survival of the company. That being said, I think that will come eventually. I think people trusting technology too much has always been an issue. I mean, that's been always the story, right? Like, do you trust everything you read on the internet? And I think that becomes even more of an issue today as, you know, you get deep fakes, fake news, all that stuff.
Lost elections.
Oh. I think so. There's a lot of, I think, people learning how to use technology and how to vet technology and how to vet the information online. I think there's some of that has gone away. I think people are being a little too trusting of technology. I think people need to be a little bit more skeptical about what they read. Sorry, what was the second question?
Do you see or do you foresee the appearance of the companies who create AI that would prevent the problems with AI or correct the ethics of AI or check if there is a bias in data set?
Yeah, I definitely am seeing that. Even like in a more specific case, back to autonomous vehicles, there are a lot of people who are developing safety AI stacks or systems or services on top of the actual AV stack. So, you know, there's a safety stack that watches over what the car is doing just to make sure that the car itself is not doing something crazy. So there's definitely a lot of, I think, in cases where a mistake is very, very deadly, I think you're seeing that happen for sure. Because there's a definite either liability use case or monetary use case.
Reassuring, thank you.
Hi, this is Ilona. Thank you for being so generous and sharing so freely. I don't know if it's okay to give a plug.
As long as there's a question mark behind it.
Okay, do you know anybody who would be interested in buying us? We would like to do an early stage trade sale. It's called 1 Million Women to Tech. So if you know anybody, we're like a Khan Academy for women 18 plus interested in technology. have about 34,000 members across 145 countries, profitable but small. And maybe it's an interesting content play for like Udacity or Netflix or LinkedIn Learning, or it could be a recruitment piece for somebody who is looking, like you mentioned, to add more women into their mix. So if you know anybody, could you introduce?
Our panel will stick around afterwards. You can chat with them.
Thank you so much. And anybody here as well, please find me.
So actually, I have a question. If there's no others, can I have that? We were talking a little bit earlier, Nuno, about using AI in the venture capital business and how it was sort of really revolutionizing your industry and how you make investment decisions, how you maybe do fundraising. Can you explain that as a use case as to how that works?
Yes, I mean, if you look at the venture capital industry, a lot of people would say, well, it's changed a lot because there's angels now and there's micro venture firms and there's crowdfunding and whatever. I would allege it's actually an industry that hasn't changed too much, that actually hasn't been very disrupted. There's pools of capital that come sometimes into the market that just obliterate stuff. I mean, the SoftBank Vision Fund, and Grishin Robotics probably when they first came out was pretty aggressive in getting into the market. But at the same time, really, the industry doesn't change very much. And I think there's really 2 or 3 models that I believe could be disruptive in the industry. I think one model is the Grishin Robotics model, which is, very operational, shared services, I would call, approach to the market, where you're trying to create value to your portfolio companies by having a lot of people that help with market development, with marketing, with comms and press, with potentially even exits on corporate development side, et cetera, et cetera. So that's one model, but it requires normally a lot of assets under management. It requires you the ability for the fund itself with its management fees to hire people to do this stuff. It's not free, right? And I think there's one other angle, which is more what I would call the quant VC model of the world. There's a few notable quant venture capital firms in the Bay Area now that are focused on very specific criteria sets, correlation ventures around investors, Signal Fire around talent, Tribe, and before that, probably the social capital guys with 8Ball, focus really around product market fit. We at Strive were very focused on product market fit as our criteria set. So I think the key thing there is, can the injection of data, in the processing of data, the analysis of data, really do the 2 core things that you need to do as a venture capitalist, which is identify more and more companies to look at and get better at making decisions around investing in the company or not, which is sort of the due diligence process. And I think there's no doubt that that's the case, right? And there's already evidence of that. I have the evidence of my first fund for that, and we're a top 5 percentile fund from that vintage in the Bay Area. I'm sure Signal Fire would say the same, and Correlation would say the same. I'm sure the Tribe Capital and Social Capital guys would say the same. So I think there's plenty of evidence. It just requires a very fundamentally different mindset on how you approach the market. The Bay Area has been driven by networks of people that connect with each other. And some of these networks are relatively proprietary, right? It's the people that went to Stanford together, or the people that go to the same clubs together, or the people that know each other from the same entrepreneurial networks, et cetera, et cetera. And in some ways, it's very difficult for a venture firm that has built on that source of network to use anything else, right? Because, if you're a partner at a venture firm and you have a head of research who comes and tells you, I have this great company, I've looked at them for 2 months, I think we should really, really look at investing in them. And then one of the partners comes in and says, by the way, this is a real story. One of the partners comes in and says, one of my buddies has this great entrepreneur, I met with the guy, he's done a very successful company before, he's doing this new thing. Which company do you think is going to move forward and get invested in, right? It's the latter, right? It's not the guy who did the 2 months research, whatever, right? Because that's the network, that's the legacy of how things are done. So I think there's a huge opportunity for disruption there. It's not easy, because it requires the mindset not just of an investor and having the track record of an investor, but it requires the mindset of a product manager, it requires the mindset of a data scientist and a data analyst and a data engineer, which are very different mindsets from the mindset normally of an investor. But I am a true believer that that's the future. And everyone keeps saying, well, every 2 or 3 years we keep talking about quant funds and the edge funditization of venture capital, et cetera. It never happens. It's already happened. There's already funds that have done it. So, and we just happen to be one of them.
We have a question here.
Thank you for the panel. I have a question mainly for George, please. We have an exponential growth for data right now. year over year, we have growth, exponential growth, and the AI is not accessing even 1% of the data because everyone is concerned about the data privacy and security. So what are the trends or what are the technology trends that will allow the acceleration of this, relevant acceleration for AI to access data as well?
So your question is, sorry, your
Yeah,
question
so how can we catch up with the growth of the data growth, allowing organizations to be more data-driven organizations, I mean the enterprise AI? What are the technology trends right now that is influencing or impacting this, driving this? We have a problem now. We need to address it, right? So the data is growing and growing fast and growing exponentially, and the AI is not accessing even 1% or 5% domestically. So how can we allow AI to access more data and democratize the data-driven digital transformation, if I might?
Yeah, I think there's certain assumptions that are around data. They'll be able to leverage it with the various algorithms or technology that were once, I think, dominant in the industry. So for instance, structured versus unstructured data, third-party data versus internal data. I want to make sure I get to your point. The thing that's fascinating to me is to be able to see, even when data is not aggregated in a formal way, even when data has various forms to it, right? Even when it's not internal to a company but can be sourced through third parties, what the power of I've seen AI and ML do is to be able to create, starting with a business impact, and then work backwards and get the data that will deliver the business impact, independent of its form, its structure, and where it lives, right? So I think in a real sense, data is becoming a much more powerful in terms of its impact, but it doesn't require the type of infrastructure, the type of, if you will, investment that has historically been done, because it's around the power of the data now that can be automated, self-learned, and then, if you will, refreshed to create impact is extraordinary. So it's almost like we're going into a situation in a couple senses, don't build a data lake. We don't need it. We can do some amazing things with what's available now. And we could do it in 3 to 6 months. So, I mean, that's the power. I'm not sure I answered your question, but I want to give you some context.
Let's hear it for the panel. Ladies and gentlemen, stay in your seats. We've come to the time of the event you've all been waiting for, the raffle. So has everyone who wanted to enter the raffle already done so and dropped in your business card? Your chances look pretty good. Going once, going twice. All right, let's get started. Roger.
Okay, drum roll, please.
Drum roll. And the winner is?
Well, that's a colorful card. No GPS. There it is. No GPS.
Come on down. You get a photo with the author a little bit later on.
Thank you very much.
Okay, and the next winner is, another drum roll, please. Come on down.
The picture works all the time.
Yeah, that looks just like you. Just kidding.
Thank you so much.
All right, our last prize for tonight. Yeah, we got 3. You put it back in. Now he's going to win again. All right, and the winner is, last drum roll.
Val Yalushik, Osico Software. Must be here to win. It's Val, the CEO, Val Valusic from Osico Software.
Val.
Oh, yeah.
You sure that's you? All right. Thank you. Congratulations. So the video will be available on our YouTube channel, youtube.com/idea to IPO in 48 hours. Check it out. Thanks for coming. We'll see you next time.